Welcome to Raaonline. I am Dr. Sneha, Assistant Professor. I have completed my MD and PhD in Forensic Medicine and Toxicology. Today we will be looking at the asphyxial deaths. The objective of today's class would be to define and understand what asphyxia means, what is the mechanism of asphyxia, what are the general signs and the localized signs of asphyxia, as well as the different types or classification of asphyxial deaths. This picture shows it all. If you can see, there are the different forms of asphyxia which are shown in a nutshell in this picture. We will go into each one of this one by one. So asphyxia, what is the most important thing that we require to stay alive? It is oxygen. The oxygen in the air when we breathe in goes to every cell in our body. Now without this oxygen, what happens? There will be disruption of the function of three main organs of our body, which is the brain, the lung and the heart. And once all of these three stop, it is called as death. So asphyxia is best described as an interference with respiration due to any cause. Associated terms with this are hypoxia and anoxia. When there is a complete interference with the respiration or when there is complete stoppage of oxygen supply to the body, it is called as anoxia. When there is partial interference or partial stoppage of oxygen supply to the body, it is called as hypoxia. So like I said, anoxia is a state which is characterized by failure of oxygen to reach the cells of body tissues. So coming to the causes of asphyxial deaths. First is when there is a compression to the windpipe. So if there is going to be a compression to the windpipe, there will not be any oxygen entry into the lungs. This form of asphyxia is again divided into two types. One is when the compression to the windpipe is by a suspension of the noose around the neck and where the weight of the body becomes the suspension force. This is called as hanging. The next type is where the suspension force is anything apart from that of the weight of the body. This is called as strangulation. Coming to the next type of asphyxial death, it is because of the submersion of the mouth or nostril under the fluid, which means there is the restriction of air entry through the mouth or nostril because there is some other fluid getting inside the mouth and nostril. This type of asphyxial death is called as drowning. Third type is when there is exclusion of the air from the lungs by any other means other than constriction at neck or drowning, which means there is some form of obstruction whereby the lungs are not able to expand on its own. This type of asphyxial death is called as suffocation. The last type is when there is compression or mechanical fixation of the chest or abdomen. This is called as the traumatic asphyxia. Now coming to the types and causes of anoxia. This is called as Gordon's classification of anoxia. There are physiologically four types of anoxia. One is anoxic anoxia, which is defined as the lack of proper amount of oxygen in the inspired air. For example, the environment in which you are staying or you are at a moment when there is not enough of oxygen in that particular environment, it results in anoxic anoxia. A few examples of this, if I was to say, is number one is where you are at a high altitude or when you're flying at a high altitude. The level of oxygen in that altitude could be very less so that you are not taking in enough of air which has got a lot of oxygen at the required pressure for you to have enough oxygen in your blood. Next is when you inspire inert gases. Inert gases are like when the air is combined with gases such as methane or hydrogen sulfide, which will combine with the oxygen in the environmental air and prevent that from being absorbed in your blood. Last is due to mechanical obstruction of the air passages like we've already seen in the earlier slide. And finally, it is because of interference in the respiratory movements, which is also called as mechanical asphyxia.